All of you, hope you guys are great. Welcome back to yet another video. In this video we're going to write the smart contract for inheritance. In the last video we had written the smart contract for X stock exchange. If you haven't watched that, I'll link in the I button in the description so you guys can follow that. Make sure to save the playlist because in that we're going to write close to 70 plus smart contract that will give you a very good understanding because we're going to write different industry smart contract. In this video we'll talk about inheritance smart contract, why it's so important, and we're going to compare with the real world application. So what happened in the real world contract system? Just imagine that your father, your grandfather has a business, has a property which he or she wants to distribute among his children, maybe to the trust. So what he do in the centralized system, he called to the court lawyer and he signed all the properties, laws and documents, and that's how the entire distributed system work. But you can take that system on the blockchain. You can write a smart contract which can do all of these things for you as a inheritance property acquirement, and that's what we're going to build right now. So let's start working it. So let me give the name of the contract inheritance. We have to provide the license identifier, and now we have to provide this Solidity version. So I'll take this 8.0 and we have to initialize our contract. We'll call it inheritance. You can call whatever name you have. If you want to give your name to your parents or your business owner, something like that, you can give it to it. And now we have to define a couple of state variables. So first thing we're going to define is the address. So whoever will deploy the contract, we're going to store his address as an owner. Now we have to store the mapping. So in that we're going to simply take the number. So we're going to assign an address and it will return us the value. So that's called inheritance. So this is the first mapping we have. Let's define the second mapping, and it's going to return the boolean. So it will say that if the person who is trying to access the data try to take the advantage and claiming inheritance, he or she is beneficiary or not. Okay, so that's the track we are keeping into this mapping. Now we're going to simply come down and here we're going to initialize the event. So the receive event we're going to have, in that we're going to pass this from amount, and we're going to assign one more event, receive any beneficiary added. So when we'll add any person who can claim the beneficiary, we have to initialize this event. In that we're going to pass the address, and that's the only thing. And now we have to define one more beneficiary, one more event, that's called remove, and in that we have to simply remove the beneficiary. So these are the three events we have. Now let's define one more, distributed. So once the entire properties got distributed, and that time we have to initialize this event, so beneficiary and the amount. Now these are the three events we have. These are the state variables we have defined. So that looks so fine. Now we have to define our constructor. In that we do have to simply update the owner of the contract, message.sender, and that's what we have to do. And now we have to create a couple of functions which allow to perform all of these tasks we have defined in the contract. So let's come here. We're going to define this modifier because we have to restrict certain function to only owner of the contract. We don't need to allow other user to have an access. You can do multiple way. You can write the required statement and there you can check the condition inside a function, but that there you can create an opportunity for the re-entrancy. But when you go with the modifier, you will not allow anyone to attack your contract because they have to fulfill this condition. Sometimes the user can play around with these functions when you have this required statement. So it's always better that whenever you want to restrict any functions, use modifier instead of using the required statement. So we have this modifier for only user, and that we have to make the check that whoever is calling the function is the owner. Otherwise we have to throw this error message, only the owner can call this function. So that's the one modifier we have. And now we can define the function. So the first function we want to define is this receive inheritance. So this will allow the user can receive their beneficiaries, the funds or the properties, all of those things. It will be public payable because there is a transfer of fund. And here we can come and here we have to make the conditions. So message.value should be greater than 0, because if it's 0 or equal to 0, there is no sense for making the transaction and paying gas fee. So we have to throw this error message. Okay, greater than 0. So that's the first check we have to do. And once we pass this check, we have to simply assign this into our inheritance, and we have to simply add the amount we want to assign to that particular user. So that looks pretty fine. And we have to simply initialize this event, receive it, message.sender and the value. So this is the very first function we have. Now let's come here. Now we have to create a second function. We'll say add beneficiary. So to add that, we have to pass the address. We don't need to pass any amount, and this function can only call by the owner of the contract, because he is no, so owner of the contract in the real world will be the property owner. So if your father or mother or grandfather started the business and he wants to distribute all the funds, so that's he become the one who going to call these functions, add beneficiary, and he going to add your name. So that looks fine. Now we're going to simply add the beneficiary and make it true. So yes, he is the part of this beneficiary system, and we're going to initialize this event. Looks pretty fine so far, so good. And that's the first function we have. Now, sorry, two function we have. Now we have to create the third function. We'll say revoke beneficiary, and this function can only revoke by the owner of the contract. So if you're a son and if you don't follow your father's footstep, then he has the power to revoke and take the property from you, and that's what function we are building. Okay, so here we have to simply turn this to false, so he will not become the beneficiary, and that's the only thing we have to do. And we have to simply initialize this event. That's the third function we have. Now we have to come here, and here we're going to create a last function, distribute inheritance, and then we have to pass the beneficiary and the amount, and we'll make it only owner, so only owner can call this function. And we have to check for a condition that well beneficiary, so whatever address owner is providing, he is a valid beneficiary or not. Okay, you can simply remove this condition, but I would like to go with that because this function can only call by the owner, so he knows that who is the beneficiary. But for the safer side, we can go with this condition, but you can also remove it. It's totally optional. Now we have to do the second chain. We have to check for the amount, that the amount should be greater than 0, otherwise we have to throw the error message. Now we have to go with the third check, that amount should be less or equal to the inheritance owner. So like the owner, whatever amount the owner has, the beneficiary cannot claim more than that. Okay, there's no point of that sense, sorry. So we have to throw an error message. Now these are the condition we have. Now we have to simply make the transaction, so we have to subtract the balance from the owner of the contract, and that's the balance we're going to send to the beneficiary, and we're going to simply add the amount to his address, and that looks fine to me. Now we have to simply initialize this event. We have beneficiary and we have to pass the amount, and that looks pretty awesome. So we are done with this entire smart contract. Hope so far everything is clear to all of you guys. Now let's test this out. We have all of these state variables and event. We have the constructor, we have the modifier, we have the receive, inheritance, remove, and all of this function we have built. Now we're going to simply deploy the contract. So I'm going to deploy with the very first account, and this is the only contract I have. I click on this deploy, and the transaction went through, and here you will have the instant. Okay, I have already the previous data, so I will redeploy the contract. Click on this deployed, and here I have the new instance, and you can see we have all of this function. So if you click on the owner, this is the owner I have, and you can pass the address of the beneficiary, and you can check whether he is a beneficiary or not. So the very first function we have to call is that we have to call this, let's come here, we have to call this add beneficiary function, because this function can only call by owner, and owner can provide the beneficiary address. So what I will do, I'm the owner, I'm going to take the address number 2, and I'm going to come back to the address number 1, then I can able to provide. So I'll say add beneficiary, so I'll click on here and provide that, and I hit the transaction. So you can see the transaction went through, and if you copy the address and you can paste here, you will get true. Yes, he is a beneficiary. If you paste here and you can call this inheritance, yes, he has no amount so far. So that looks pretty fine, and from here you can easily able to remove that one. So now that looks pretty fine. We have done all of these things. Now receive inheritance, so he can able to transfer the fund, amount must be greater than 0. So this function can call by anyone. So what I will do, I'll come here and I'm going to transfer a couple of fund into the contract. So I'll come here, ether, and now I will say this receive inheritance. I'll click on this, the transaction went through, and here you will find the amount we have in the contract. So that's absolutely looking fine and working absolutely amazingly. So that looks pretty fine. Now we have this distribution function, and that we have to pass the address of the beneficiary and the amount. So this function can only call by the owner, so we have to get the address of this buddy, the beneficiary, and now we're going to switch back to the account. Okay, the owner, actually we are the owner, and now what I can do is, let's come here, distributions, and we can have to simply pass the address and we have to pass the amount. I'll say 5 and make a transaction. The transaction went through and you can see the amount we have taken from there. Okay, so he has successfully withdrawn the fund, so looking absolutely fine. So you can see how easy it is to create a contract like inheritance contract, like a real world. You can make it more complex, but I made it simple to make you understand that you can create a contract in these area. And if you guys really want me to build a project on top of this contract, then do let me know, and also let me know what are the technology you are interested in for the project, so I can build on that, so you will have the maximum learning. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, do so, and make sure to access the complete playlist, because in that we're going to have close to 75% smart contract for different industry, and that will give you a real learning. Okay, so hope this entire thing makes sense to all of you guys. And if you're really interested in the source code, then you can check dollar1000.com. There you will find all the codes which I have provided, and you can download it and you can compare and you can play around with. So with that, I'm ending this video. Have a wonderful day. Let's meet in the next video.